One. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today is February 25th, 2024. Welcome back to another episode of the Harsh Talks Hockey podcast. We have a very special show for you guys today, introducing our first ever guest, a avid Rangers fan and probably my second favorite American, Chris Harrison. Welcome to the show. It is a pleasure to have you.
Oh man, I gotta assume that Austin Matthews, Arizona's finest, takes the first spot.
Yeah, or
Fair
maybe
enough.
even Patrick Kane. I've got a soft spot for him too.
That's a solid choice.
Yeah, I was just watching the Red Wings and Chicago game because it was his first time back. Um yeah, he just scored the OT winner. It doesn't get any more magical than that.
My goodness. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wish his short stint with the Rangers had gone a little bit better than it did, but he was still
Yeah.
recovering from that hip injury and just didn't really have the juice like that. But it
Yeah,
would have been nice to
no.
get him a cup, but just it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, don't worry. They're looking much better this year, you know. While we're at it, we might as well get into it, you know. They were on a bit of a heater and then they just dropped one to the Blue Jackets. It's always the trap game, you know. You
Yeah.
never expect it against the Blue Jackets, a team like them, but they just dropped it. What did you think of the streak so far?
It was like one of those stat jinxes. Like at the beginning of the game, it was like the Rangers are undefeated on the second night of back-to-backs, and of
It
course, we
just
lose this
it's
one.
one of
As soon as
those
they brought
games,
that up,
yeah.
we lost it. But
Yeah.
it wasn't the worst game I've seen them play. But there was a stretch in through the second and the beginning of the third where they were just getting killed on the rush. Like they were just not doing Jonathan Quick any favors. And as much as he's capable of stealing one from time to time, they really did not help him out. There was nothing he could have
Yeah.
done on a couple of those.
Yeah. I mean that's sort of been the story, one of the bigger stories this year of for the Rangers, the fact that Jonathan Quick is just somehow back to being old Jonathan Quick. And Shesterkin hasn't looked that well. I mean, has that really been the case so far? Has Quick just been that much more surprising, or is it just a slow year for Shesterkin?
It's a little bit of both. Like
Mm,
Shesty had a little bit of rough start to the season, and
fair
how
enough.
he is sometimes, he'll get a little down on himself. He'll get a little down on his confidence when he's going through a rough stretch. You'll hear
That
it in the
that's goalies.
interviews. You'll see it in his body language a little bit. He's been sharp in his last handful of starts, which has kind of powered that win streak that just ended. But
Yeah.
Quick has been genuinely surprising. Like I thought he was not cooked, but maybe marinated. You know what I'm
At
saying? Like
that
maybe
age, at
kind of
that
getting
age,
there.
you have questions, you know. It's only a matter of time. I've been thoroughly surprised with Quick's performance this year. I think especially looking at a team as good as the Rangers, having
Mhm.
two goalies that can perform at a high level doesn't hurt. Plus, you can't deny experience is experience, and that's a multi cup run goalie that has won more than one cup, you know, and
Yeah,
been
and I
the
mean,
reason that Kings team may have won a cup or two, you know.
stole
But
one from us. He stole
yeah,
one from us. I still
yeah.
have flashbacks every time I
So
see
it's
him make a
it's
nice save.
it's
But
it's
I mean,
good to
it's
it's good to have
been
him on your side for once. Mm,
yeah, and we're a really goalie dependent team too. We have been for many, many years, even back to the Henrik era. And
yeah,
so when your starter's struggling, like normally that would be like the death knell for a team like the Rangers. Like they would be, way down the dumps, would be, free fall down the standings. But having Quick come in there and play the way he's played,
yeah,
it's really softened the blow and it's allowed us to stay afloat, really. Like we haven't gotten the best of our top goalie, but having
yeah.
a backup play that well has really given us a surprisingly good plan B.
And it's kept him at the top of the league, you know. You can't deny the fact that the Rangers are, you know, I would like to say officially a wagon, but they look like a formidable force in the East, especially knowing how competitive the East is going to be come playoff time. Um, over the last, but of course the last 10 games were a bit of a highlight for the season, but like what have
Mhm.
been your thoughts so far just throughout the season, starting all the way back in October? Like, what is your assessment of this team heading into the trade deadline?
They're in an interesting spot because early in the season they came out really hot, and it was genuinely shocking, right? Because
Yeah,
preseason was a disaster. And like
Hmm.
preseason doesn't matter for anything, but when you have a new coach, when you're adapting to a new style of play, and you see it going that slowly, when you see it looking like a little bit of a mess, you think, okay, it's gonna be a rough start to the season. We might need Shesty to bail us out. And
Yeah.
then for us to come out that hot and to be top of the league throughout that first stretch of the season,
Yeah.
genuinely shocking. Like I don't think anyone anticipated it. The defense looked better than it had in a long time. Then we
Yeah.
had that stretch where we looked awful for a while, like a solid month and a half where the team was just a mess. And I started to think, did they turn back into a pumpkin? Did Cinderella turn back into a pumpkin in midnight? Did the carriage disappear and all that stuff? But I mean, they've righted the ship over the
Yeah.
last couple of weeks. They're starting to stabilize again. I'm starting to think,
Yep.
okay, maybe this team is actually legit. Maybe it wasn't just a fluky hot start.
Yeah, yeah. That has been sort of what I've heard so far. I mean, it doesn't also hurt the fact that like, you know, you've had some emergences and some out, surprising surprises so far this year. I know Panarin's been unreal, but no, watching Panarin growing up more than a lot of people have, I know what a stud he is. I know he can play. You know, he's one of the best playmakers in the league,
Hmm.
especially at that cap hit. You kind of expect him to be, but I wanted to talk about sort of the emergence of Lafreniere for someone that a lot of people were writing off so early into his career. He's sort of won back some haters. What do you have to say about his performance so far?
Yeah, a lot of Rangers fans have had to issue formal apologies to Alexi Lafreniere this
I've heard.
season.
Even though I'm not a Rangers fan, I still have to apologize. I was ready to hop on the he's a bust bandwagon at any moment.
He's an interesting one because even over the last couple of seasons, he's actually been one of the team leaders in 5-on-5 goals. But five on
Really?
five goals is where we're terrible, so it's not like it's a high standard he's comparing himself to.
Yeah,
But he he's always had these flashes of play where it's like, okay, he can withstand the physicality of the NHL. That's not really an issue. The
yeah,
speed is lacking sometimes, and like sometimes he gets a little sometimes he tries to do a little bit too much or not enough. Maybe he doesn't assert himself. He's still trying to find that balance. And I think
mhm,
people have been talking for a long time about the mismanagement of his play time, right? Playing him as
yeah,
a third line left wing just because the left is his natural position, but our leading goal scorer and our best player are both left wingers. And so
yeah,
he was just buried down the lineup, wasn't getting power play time, and eventually something had to happen. Either somebody had to get traded or he had to play full-time right wing. They
yeah,
moved him to the right. New coach came in and said, I'm not I'm not yanking his play time around like the last coach did. Putting him on the
yeah.
right full time. I'm putting him on Breadman's line.
And
And
just setting him up,
basically,
just setting him
yeah,
up.
if that didn't work, then the bus conversation starts, right? But you put
Mhm.
him on a line with a playmaker like that and a solid two-way center like Trocheck, and now we're
Yeah.
seeing what he can do.
I feel like that's sort of been a big contributor is the fact that you surround a guy with the right players and you give him the right time to shine. You start to see who he really is as a player, and a lot of the complaints have been, oh, Lafreniere hasn't been put in an environment that he's been able to thrive. But obviously he's not the only rookie that I've had an eye on this team. What about Capo Caco? What do you think of him so far? I
Kaapo
don't know.
Kakko, man,
I haven't heard much from him this season.
he's been injured for good parts of the season, so it's been a little bit of a quiet one for him, and the points
Yeah.
production hasn't really been there when he's been in. He's another one of those odd players because, like Lafreniere, he was also taken near the top of the draft. Like we took him number two the year before we took Lafreniere number one. And
Hmm.
normally you go 2-1 in the draft back to back years, you expect two superstars, like franchise defining players. It turns out we may have gotten a very good player and a solid contributor.
A
And
solid
that's
contributor.
they may still evolve into something else, but for now we're looking at okay, these are two useful players. Kako is really good at being like a two-way guy, helping out a possession. He's just not a points producer. And
Yeah.
so he's done well on that, on the line with Zibanejad and with Kreider when he's been up on the first line, even
Yeah.
if he doesn't put up first line numbers.
Hmm.
But his playing time still does get yanked around a little bit. He hasn't consistently been put on that first line. And so, sometimes with his development, you wonder like what his ceiling is really going to be if he's not up there playing against the top competition with the top players on the team. If he's
Hmm.
like languishing on the third line, it's not going to be as good for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess he doesn't sort of have the pressure of being a first overall pick like Lafreniere does. So I know a
Mm.
lot of eyes have been on him. Um, What about we've gone a bit over the forward core. Is there any other players you wanted to highlight? Any very disappointing players or any players that have stood out to you that you think we should talk about?
There's two guys I want to touch on a little bit. One
Yeah.
is an absence. One is how it's kind of had a knockdown effect, and it's a big part of the reason that I think Capo Caco's season has gone the way it has is because Philip Hedl got knocked out for the season a while back. Like
Yeah.
him going down with that concussion and just not making it back onto the ice.
He
Like he had
he's been such
emerged
a he's
as
been
a
such a tough watch. For the hope that we had for Phil Pito.
Yeah. Yeah, he was emerging as a genuine second line center.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the season, his goal scoring wasn't, at previous levels yet, but the playmaking was there. He was driving that line. He was whooping ass. Him going down means that, Akako doesn't get to play with a dynamic center. He's playing with basically a backup caliber
Yeah.
guy most of the
Yeah.
time when he's on that third line. So instead of having three centers who can drive play, we just have two, and that has an effect on the guys who aren't on those first two lines. But
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully he can come back next year. I mean, it sucks to see what happened to him because you just worry about not only his career but his long-term health when it's you got a concussion. His fourth one, I think,
Yeah,
early in the
it's
season.
it's been a reoccurring issue, and at that point, you
Yeah,
you start to wonder what sort of remaining of a player who has missed so much time in such a young career.
yeah, and he had to get helped off the ice, I think, when he was on his way, like working back. I think
Yeah,
it was like during a skate. It wasn't like a full contact practice or something. It was like during a skate. And he had to be helped off the ice. And it's just like you wonder, man, you worry for his long-term health. But besides Heedle, the other guy I want to talk about is Vincent Trocheck. If we're talking about guys that this is one that
yeah,
I might need to issue an apology to. Like,
yeah,
uh, when we first got him, I was a little skeptical. I was like, okay, we let oh man, we let Panarin's buddy go for a guy with pretty similar production at a pretty similar contract, and I was like, for what, right?
slots right in.
First year he was solid, right?
Mhm.
Um, Second year he's really seized that number two spot. Like I thought, the beginning of the season, him going down to the third line with Hito going up to the second seemed like it made sense. We wanted
Yeah,
somebody more dynamic up there, a little more exciting player, maybe with a higher ceiling. But since Heedle went down, Trocheck back up to the second line, he has looked really good. He has
yeah,
more skill than I think I gave him credit for.
yeah.
He's amazing at faceoffs, which is something that the franchise had been missing for years. We were not a good faceoff team before Trocheck's arrival.
Hmm.
And I mean, honestly, man, he's a stud. He's a stud. He plays great with Panarin, plays great with Lafreniere. Just an awesome, awesome glue guy who just ties everything together.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. We've covered basically most of the forward core. What are your thoughts on and goaltending to some extent? But what are your thoughts on the defensive core? And I know they've got Adam Fox, who's like sort of the
Mm.
shining star of that back end. But you think this is a formidable enough defensive core for a long run?
No, I mean, I have my doubts sometimes. I
Yeah,
do like the players we have. I don't know if they're there yet. The our captain is a tough guy to assess. Jacob Trouba is good at some things, less good at some other things. Not the best skater at his position. Sometimes he goes hunting for hits when he doesn't necessarily need to, which can leave him out of
yeah,
position. And I mean,
yeah,
Keandre Miller's a guy who can cover a lot of ground, but he's still a young dude. You don't
hmm,
necessarily want him to have to cover for all that.
yeah,
Likewise, you have to cover for Miller's mistakes sometimes, and
hmm,
he doesn't necessarily have the foot speed to do that. So it's a little bit of an awkward pairing sometimes. They're good when they're good. They're bad when they're bad
fair enough.
as a duo. Fox and Lindgren is honestly still a phenomenal pair. They haven't been as great as the last couple seasons, but they're still good. They play well
Yeah,
together. I worry about losing Lindgren in the offseason just because of
mhm,
the salary cap crunch, but
yeah,
I really hope we don't because he's phenomenal. A
yeah.
lot of that is complicated by the Trouba contract, and I'm not going to ever
Fair
blame
enough.
players for the contract. It's not
Fair
his
enough.
fault,
Yeah.
but they gave him like 8 mil a year bidding against basically nobody, and that
Yeah.
definitely constricts. You can get two or three quality players for that money, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
looking at the injury situation right now, there's a couple of holes that need to be filled, and it'd be cool to have a little extra cash. But he's by all accounts a good captain and a good leader for the team. So I'm not too
Hmm.
torn up about it. But there's the part of me that's like, damn, we could have had a couple of extra roster upgrades were it not for all
Yeah.
that money being tied up to Trouba.
I mean, in a salary cap league, you're gonna have every team have some sort of holes. You're gonna have that one, spot in the roster. Like, I wish we could have had someone better, just a little bit better. Um,
Right.
it's been a really funny trend seeing teams that have really good, number one defensemen, and they struggle to find pair ups for those guys. I know
Hmm.
Colorado's got McCarr and Taves, which is like a near perfect duo, but people had questions about Quinn Hughes in Vancouver and finding him a good partner, but that's worked out fine. There's always going to be a discussion in Toronto about having a good partner for Morgan Riley, and he's been switched around with a bunch of guys here and there. So, it's always interesting to see how teams try to address the issue of having a number one solid defenseman and who they could pair him
Hmm.
up with. Um, speaking of, trades and salary cap, do you think there's any, specifically glaring needs that this team should look for? Is there anyone you have on the trade market that you think is the Rangers need this guy? This is the key to to solving all their problems.
Like there's enough guys who are available who are kind of like mid-tier players that I'm not
Hmm.
like going to be too honed in on a specific one. I know that Drury
Hmm.
has his wants and needs, but I think basically the two positions that everyone kind of has us tied to right now are a third line center who can
Yeah,
drive play a little bit because that third
yeah,
line's been struggling since
yeah,
the injuries and all that.
yeah,
And then somebody else on the right wing.
yeah,
Like we have that second line nailed down. Lafreniere's he's made that position his. They're not entirely certain on Capo Caco being the first line guy. So he's getting
yeah,
pushed around a little bit. And then Blake Wheeler is now also out for the season. He was supposed to
yeah,
be the difference maker who came in on the cheap. But the one silver lining to the Heedle injury is that we got like a hardship exception basically
yeah.
to the cap because we were up against the cap, and so I think we have like 4 million to spend or something like that,
Hmm.
or 4 million in temporary space. So they could get themselves a rental, which they've done a couple times, or they could be a little more ambitious and like shed like an actual rotation player and
Yeah,
bring somebody in a little bigger. Obviously,
yeah.
the pipe dream is Buchnevich from the Blues. I
Oh
would
my God,
love
that
to
would
have him
be
back on the team,
insane. I,
but
I I'm really
I don't know if
intrigued
the
on
Blues
seeing
are
where
selling
Buchnevich goes. Yeah. I mean, I've
there.
I've heard I've heard some people throw around, Vetrano and Henrique from Anaheim, and
Yeah,
they've sort of been linked to the to the Rangers. So it's just obviously every team's got their cap situation, but do you think the Rangers are going to be making any a move, or are they holding pat with the lineup? Because especially with the team that plays at the top of the league, you kind of have that fear of ruining chemistry by bringing in a bigger piece. So you really think that the management and that team is looking to actively make a move right now, or is it mostly just speculation?
I think they've got it just because they have two, core guys who just aren't going to be here for the rest of the season, and they have enough money to do some maneuverability. It's just a matter of are they going to swing for the fences and like try to bring in like a Buchnevich, or are they going to say, okay, let's see if we can get a reasonable deal on Toronto. And Vetrano's been good this year,
Yeah, he
and he's
has
got familiarity with the Rangers. So I mean, that would
on
be
a
a
bad
great
team
fit.
as well. That Anaheim
Yeah,
team is not very good.
he's shown that he can energize a Rangers lineup. We picked him up at the deadline before. We'll damn sure do it again if we can. But I mean, I don't know if they want somebody who might stick around for a season or so, so we don't have to do this right wing rental thing every
Mhm.
single season and see if it works. We've tried like five different, reasonably big name dudes in the last 2 or 3 seasons, and
Yeah,
it's been mixed results. There's a couple guys I miss, and a couple guys I'm just like, yeah, that
yeah,
didn't work out.
yeah. Um, just a couple more things I wanted to cover before we move on to some other stuff. Matt Rempe, my absolutely new favorite player in the league. I love him. I love everything about him. I love his style of play. He is a freakishly large player. You guys just got handed basically another Truba for out of thin air. I mean, he's been on your
Big
team,
boy. It's a
but oh
big
my God,
boy.
he is so fun to watch.
It's like 6'7", 240 or something like that. Is it? He looks
Every
funny
every
on
person I've
skates.
talked, every person or person I've heard from about this player, for some reason he just gets taller. Someone said he's 6'7", then I heard 6'8", then I heard 6'9".
The
It's
legend grows.
crazy. Yeah, I don't know, but he's so tall. And I was watching that New Jersey game a couple of days back. and he got Bastion, and I know they kicked him out of the game for that. But
Mm.
if it's someone, it's just when you're that tall, everything seems like an unnecessarily big hit, you know? But he is going to be so fun to watch come playoff time.
It's really interesting. He wasn't even a dude that people were really paying attention to in their minor system. You know what I mean? He wasn't even a guy who people were thinking about
Yeah,
as someone who's gonna might make a push for the lineup. Like he wasn't on
yeah,
anybody's mind. People were talking about like Brennan Othman and guys like that. Like
yeah.
he wasn't really on my radar, and he came in. Man, he's getting himself into some scraps. Like,
That,
I
that's
think
that's always
I
good to hear.
saw a stat this morning. I don't know if it still holds now because another game has passed, but he had more penalty minutes than ice time
Oh
in
yeah,
the
no,
first
that
four
I've heard that
games.
too. That is, he's racked up those minutes really quickly. It's just so fun to watch. Speaking of playoff time, what looking at the East and looking at the division, who do you think is a team the Rangers match up with really well, and what's one team you're looking to avoid at all costs?
The team I'm looking to avoid is the same team I'm looking to avoid every season. I do not want to see the Hurricanes. I just don't want to
Oh my
see them.
God. I
I
think
know,
I
like I
think
know
I think they match up
we've
well
beaten them
against the
before. I just
Hurricanes.
don't want to see them boys, man. Like
Yeah.
they have a way of uglying up the game in a way that doesn't really. We're not particularly well suited to dealing with it all the
Yeah.
time.
And they're coached
We're a bit
really
more of a
well.
skill team.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
And they're
coached
coached
really well. They're
really
really
well.
disciplined. We're a little bit looser with it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when it goes poorly against a team like that, it can go
Yeah.
really poorly. I kind of want the
Carolina over
Devils.
the last couple of years has been so structured and so well.
Yeah,
Like I know they have their conference finals troubles, and that's a whole different story. But like at least for the last couple of years, they've been so they're coached well. Their roster, besides maybe goaltending, looks like it has no really glaring flaws that I have to worry
right.
about. They're such a well-run organization, and that building is so hard to play in, I could imagine. PNC is such a tough building to be in the road, especially during playoff time. I know when the
Oh yeah,
Rangers played I know when the Rangers went down to Carolina for that playoff series a couple years back, they packed that barn. You guys
man.
know how to get to places.
I remember there was a survey in the Athletic about like players and their uh favorite and least favorite place to play on the road, and they
Yeah.
were just like nobody wanted to play in Carolina, partly because the facilities for their visiting teams were so bad.
Yeah.
Like they're really pulling out all the stops to make you uncomfortable. But yeah, man, I don't want any part of Carolina. I know we're ahead of them right now in the division,
Mhm.
but I always feel like they have a plan for
Yeah.
however you want to attack them, and I just don't want to see it.
Yeah.
I want to see New Jersey. I want revenge. I want revenge on the New Jersey Devils. I want
Yeah.
to kick them out of the tri-state area permanently.
They no longer get to claim that area. I mean, looking at the standings, Um, the Rangers are at the top of the division. There's a good chance they could pair up against the Lightning because the Lightning are in a wild card spot, and I would love to see that series again. I was
That would be fun.
that would
It
be
was less fun last time, unfortunately,
yeah.
but
I don't think anyone wants to play that Lightning team in the playoffs, man. As bad as they've been during the regular season, you can never
yeah.
bet against. Kucherov has been unreal. He single-handedly took that team on his back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a mystique about them that makes you like, I, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care how they're playing in the regular season. They've
Mhm.
done it too many times. They have too many players who have been such vital parts. And I mean, Kucherov has 98 points in 58 games.
He he's
Like,
he's
I'm
going to
sorry,
like he's
I don't
going to
want
like
any part of that man.
150. He's gonna touch like 150.
It's
Yeah.
gonna look like peak like Lemieux, Messier, Gretzky numbers, basically. Like,
Yeah,
it's scary.
you don't see those are like 80s numbers. I mean, that's bad. That seems to be like the scoring throughout the league this year has just been
Yeah.
insane. Um, McKinnon and Kucherov going back and forth. I just watched the Toronto and Colorado game last night. Oh my
Mhm.
God, he is terrifying every time he touches the puck. McKinnon is so scary when he touches the puck.
It's wild to me. I'm not used to not seeing Connor McDavid be first in this league in points. Like these guys are playing out of their
He
minds right now.
Scary thing is he still might catch up somehow. He's
Yeah.
like I think he's in like third or fourth, and he start when the Oilers were bad, he was at like 80th in the league and just fought his way back up. Yeah.
The one that shocks me still is JT Miller being fifth in the league in points.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
just like, not only did he used to play for us, but we almost got him last season. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, Right.
and
I
now
mean, he
now
plays the
they're
same position as some of our best guys, but still a
yeah,
little bit
yeah.
nice.
Now they're not moving anywhere. They're
Yeah.
they're they're gonna be they're gonna be on there. They're gonna be on there. The Vancouver team is looking really good this year. Speaking of, you want to cover some other teams around the league?
Yeah, I'm really curious about Vancouver. I think you've
Yeah.
probably watched them more than I have. I
I
nobody
I
thought
I
that they
try
would
to
be good.
cover I try to watch as many Canadian teams as possible. Vancouver looks about as good as it gets. People were saying, "Oh, the regression is happening." The regression is not happening. That team,
Yeah.
they click. They did have a bit of a hiccup over the last couple of games with, but I think that was just them adjusting to having Lindholm because he's been such a big piece on that roster now. He sort of fills that second line spot for them.
Mhm.
But that game against Boston last night was so much fun to watch. Of course, Vancouver and Boston have their rivalry, but that was such a fun game to
Yeah, when they
watch.
almost burned down Vancouver last time they played the Stanley
Oh,
Cup
oh yeah,
Finals.
oh yeah. I don't know if you've seen, but there's a really insane photo of like the riot, and in the middle there's like a couple kissing in the middle of
I
the
remember
street.
that. I remember that. That was my first impression of Vancouver, just as a place, to be completely
That's
honest.
that's a, that's a pretty pretty accurate representation of Vancouver. That place is wild. They had such a fun that was such a crazy time to be in Vancouver because it was 2011. It was a year after the Olympics. So to
Yeah.
like have your team go to the finals right after having the golden goal in your city, um, that's been tough.
They
Yeah,
they
no,
might
but
have burned the city down from
Vancouver's
celebrating had they won it. Like
yeah.
that's a lot in a short period.
Considering the fact that those are your top two teams, a Vancouver Boston rematch is very, very likely. I don't think anyone would be opposed to that final because of how fun it would be.
I mean maybe like municipal like Vancouver people, like you know what I mean, like city employees probably wouldn't like it, but other than that
No, but
I
other than
think people
that,
would be pretty thrilled
as
about
as
it.
a hockey fan, you can't deny that would be such a fun series to watch.
Do you think Vegas can get back? I know they're behind Vancouver in the standings by 11 points, but do you think Vegas can fight their way back?
Okay, so I feel like they're going through what a lot of cup winning teams go through. They're really, really hurt. Like I think
Yeah.
out of all the teams in the league, they've had the most like man games missed or whatever the stat
Mhm.
is. Um, if they're healthy and they find their game, like Aiden Hill is ridiculous. He's the clear starter for Team Canada for me. I haven't seen
Mhm.
anyone that makes a case as strong as him. Um, I feel like they're just starting to feel the cup fatigue now, and the West has just gotten so much stronger so quickly. I'm afraid that as good as they are, I feel like their injuries and the increased competition is going to hurt them a bit. I could
Mhm.
name you like maybe three or four teams that I would take right now over Vegas, as good as they've been.
Yeah.
I'm gonna regret this decision come April because I know they're gonna go at an absolute mayhem. But
Yeah.
right now, I could see maybe three or four other teams that take that spot over Vegas.
The West just looks a lot better than the East from like top to bottom. Because like I'm looking at the standings right now, and there's
Yeah,
teams in the East who are in playoff spots who have like 67, 69 points. Out
yeah.
West, man, it's looking these teams are a little bit better.
Yeah, no, no. The if you look at like the top half of the West,
Yeah.
it's not even close. Even in their wild card spot, they've got LA at the number one, wild card spot. Yeah,
Yeah, I've got some old memories of them
mhm,
causing some problems in the Stanley Cup Finals too.
yeah.
You know, I don't necessarily think that my team's going to go all the way to the finals. I just want a deep playoff run. But I am kind of curious about what you think about obviously the local team. I gotta know what's your
Toronto,
assessment of
yeah.
are they
Um,
serious or are they still unserious?
you know what does it what has always been my concern. I don't think Toronto is necessarily a bad player. They just have the hardest road to the third round. If most likely they're gonna have to play Florida or Boston in the first round.
Mhm.
And then whichever team they play in the first round, if they do happen to beat them, they have to play the other team in the second round. I
Yeah,
don't want to play, and those are two teams I don't want to play at all. Um, I still think, in my opinion, Florida is the team to beat in the East. They will fight and claw their way to the finals until anyone does it better than them. They will hurt you. They will hurt you on their way to the finals until a team that's better than them does that.
you got them over Boston.
Easy, easy.
Interesting.
Boston will not learn their lesson against a team. I don't think any team takes. I don't think any Florida has been like my dark horse pick from the East still, because nobody seems
Yeah.
to be giving them the respect that they deserve. Because it's
Yeah, and I
Florida,
just
that's
know
why.
that the idea of a Florida team being the favorite in the East just drives Canadians absolutely insane. Like I know there's still
It
a
does
level
it
of
for me.
bitterness about Bettman putting up with Sun
I
Belt
love
teams
seeing
in.
non-traditional markets thrive. As much as I live in Toronto, I love seeing non-traditional markets thrive. I think it's so
Yeah.
good. Um,
Vegas made me genuinely happy. I mean, for them to make a run to the finals in their first season was absolutely insane. Like I was
yeah,
all
no,
on board with that.
that city rallied behind that team. That
Oh
that
yeah.
became their thing for a
When LA
while.
wins it, as except for the times when they win it against my favorite team, it's a lot of fun. Like I
It
really
is,
enjoy
it
it. My
is.
first NHL game was in LA, so I have
How's
a
that?
little
How's
bit of a
that
soft
building?
spot for them.
How's that
This was
building?
back at the Forum, actually. This wasn't even at Staples
Oh,
Center. Like, yeah,
okay, okay. Yeah,
this was back in the
yeah.
late '90s, early 2000s, maybe. Like, it was
That's
still
good to
back in the
hear.
Forum. Forum's a
Yeah,
dope ass building. Like, it looks really striking, like visually from the outside. I've been
yeah.
to like comedy shows there and stuff since then, but yeah, it's a cool spot. They used to have really iconic jerseys too, which was always a plus.
That's good to
Then they
hear.
had
That's
the
good to
Gretzky
hear.
era.
Yeah.
They had some good times.
Um, I wanted to get your opinion on the Devils not having the season that I thought they would. Do you think they squeaked their way into that last playoffs that last wild card spot? Because I think Detroit looks really good this year, and I think they have that spot on lock. It's only the Tampa Bay, they're in the second wild card spot. You think the Devils catch up to them?
It is a good question, actually, because I'm looking like I knew they were having a disappointing season. It wasn't until I pulled up the standings a minute ago that I realized that they were a full 7 points back of the
Yeah,
last wild card spot. Like I
yeah,
figured they would be a little more competitive this year, especially since they look like they were on the ascendancy last year. I mean, they ran us off the ice when they
yeah.
eliminated us.
They've also been really hurt this year, and they didn't have Jack Hughes going absolutely wild. Like I remember he started the
Right.
season, he was a monster. And then he got hurt, and that team hasn't been clicking ever since, They've had Heischer's been gone for a while. They've had their fair share of injuries, and they arguably have the biggest they arguably have the biggest goaltending hole out of every team in the East. I think
Mhm.
I think if there's any team that is competitive that needs goaltending right now, it is the Devils. They cannot hold on with Vanacek as their guy.
They have three goalies who have played games this season, and not a single one of them has saved 90% of the shots he's faced. They've also been missing Dougie Hamilton for a huge chunk of the season. Yeah, it's been a little rough for them.
Yeah.
It sucks for them, man. Like I don't feel
They've
bad
been
about it,
they've
but
been they've been a front runner at looking at Jacob Markstrom. I just don't think Calgary moves that many Jacob Markstrom of all pieces away. They've been in every trade deadline talk except
mhm.
I don't think they should move Jacob Markstrom.
Yeah, there's been some talk of teams looking at key players from Calgary and Seattle in trades,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
both of them are just close enough to that wild
Yeah.
card spot right now. They're just close enough to Nashville that they can convince themselves they can make a late push. And so I
Yeah.
think they might be a little reluctant to move some of them, but there's like 10 different Seattle players who are in
Yeah.
some kind of trade rumor right now.
And the Flames just smacked around the Oilers last night. I bet that has sort of hindered their plans a little bit.
Mhm,
They won 6-3. Nazem Kadri looks like he's back in form. Um, that team's they love that Kuzmenko trade. That team
mhm.
has just found new life again. We do have just under 5 minutes left. I wanted to cover one more topic. Ovi's back.
Okay.
Ovechkin's returned. 8 goals in like 8 games now. Is he actually still making a push for that goal record?
I mean, how many goals away is he right now? Like,
I think somewhere around like 50 or 60 to some extent. He had like 8 goals in his first 46 games this season. And then he went on like I think he's scored another 8 goals in the last 8 games. Like that's been his stat line so far. He's
that's a
been
tough one.
he's been really off this year. But like
Yeah.
as of the last couple of games, he's been right back to being OV.
And the team's been really off this year, but yeah, I mean,
That's
the question
that's
is,
Washington for
how
you.
many seasons will it take for him to make up that many goals? Like, because he's not going to get it back in this or probably even the next. Is he willing to play 2 more seasons?
If he can go at a 50 goal pace next season, he might be enough to make it, I think. because I don't know the exact difference behind, and
Yeah,
he's still got a long way to go, but I think it's still maybe one or two more seasons away. I don't think Ovi wants to go before
yeah,
that.
that might be his one like true
Yeah.
goal right now, and I don't think that the franchise is going to stand in the way of him doing it, even if
Yeah.
they maybe need to rebuild a little bit more. Like I think
No,
they're not gonna let their
he's
best
gonna
ever player
retire.
not
He's
do it.
gonna retire a
Yeah,
Washington Capital. He's gonna
yeah,
retire with that team. He's gonna break the record with that team. These I don't see him or Crosby ever moving anywhere.
nah.
I know as bad as Pittsburgh's been, he's been great, which
Mhm.
makes no sense whatsoever. Because you expect the team to be better around him, but I guess it just hasn't worked out with him.
Yeah, the Caps will wait 10 years for Ovi to break the record if they have to. Like
No,
that's
no, they
like
don't
he's the
move.
franchise in the way that like cross sport comparison, but like in the way that like Dirk Nowitzki was in Dallas. Like he is
Yeah,
their
pretty
guy,
much.
like through
Like
and
the
through.
face of the franchise,
Right. Not just
without a
in his
doubt.
era, but period for the
Pure,
history
just
of the franchise.
regardless of era. Like the
Yeah,
Penguins have Lemieux to hold off, even if they never had
exactly.
Crosby. They have
Exactly. Even
Lemieux, but
before
like,
Crosby, they had a guy.
yeah, exactly. But like, Washington's got no one
Yeah.
else. Yeah. Um, I think that covers sort of everything I wanted to talk about. Thanks for being the first guest on this show.
Of course, of
Um,
course.
and I look forward to having you on again at some point when the Rangers inevitably find their way to the finals.
Oh
Hopefully.
God. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll pop back on when we're down 3 games to 1.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyways, once again, thank you everyone for listening. You can follow us now on Instagram at HarshTalksHockey. Chris, do you want to plug anything in for yourself or no?
Nothing special yet, but we'll be working on some things.
All right, good to hear, good to hear. But thank you for all for listening and I will see you all next time.